Hello, everyone, and welcome to Panem 360. For this new interview, I am very pleased to welcome uh, singer and pianist Rachel Fenlon. She will be performing on Saturday, the 16th of August, at the Domaine Forget. Her program around the Winterreise of Schubert, where she will be self-accompanying herself both playing piano and singing. This is part of a concert that represents her debut album that was released in 2024, if I'm not mistaken, which received wide critical acclaim from different critiques. And we're going to talk about this program with her today. Rachel, thank you very much for being with us.
Thank you so much for having me.
So, yeah, tell us about, for those who might not know you necessarily and know the program in itself, you have this really peculiar artistic, let's say, presence that you are both a pianist and a singer. What made you choose the fact that you wanted to become like to be those two entities in oneself? What made you choose to be a pianist and a singer at the same time?
Well, it honestly began when I first started singing. So, first, I've been playing the piano since I was three.
Mhm.
My grandfather was a jazz pianist. So, entered with him really, like improvising on the piano and everything. It was a very huge part of my childhood. And I began singing a little later as a teenager. And when I was singing in choir as a teenager and discovering opera for the first time, and that I had this high soprano voice and could sing opera, I mean, so exciting. Um, I started studies at University of British Columbia as a singer and a pianist. And in my first year of lessons, so I was 18, I would say to my teacher, I don't understand why I can't sing and play the Schubert Die Forelle, for example, or something. I didn't understand it. Like I didn't understand why that wasn't okay. It felt like so normal for me to combine the two. And then of course, like I went through university and understood that wasn't the performance practice. And I was a good student. So I didn't, I was like, okay, fine. And then I didn't think about it very much. Like I had let it go. I really pursued a sort of kind of operatic career, and then I moved to Berlin. And, Berlin is this incredible city of self discovery, of culture, of being challenged and like growth, experimentalism. And I was like, it was I still live there. It's a very inspiring city to be in, because anything goes, nothing is too crazy for Berlin. And I think it was in 2016 now. So that's 9 years ago. Wow, that I was doing an artist residency, and I had a recital planned at the end of the residency. And during that time, I was playing a lot and singing a lot. And I asked, it was like a very impulsive thing, but I just said, could I try to play and accompany myself and sing in the Schubert recital I had planned? And the artistic director said, I'll come to a rehearsal and listen. And he was like, yeah, you have to do this. And then I did that concert. And of course, it was rough. It wasn't like what it is now, but it was the feeling I had on stage in that moment. I was like, oh, I get to be all of myself. I am a pianist, I am a singer. And the feeling, it was like that magic feeling that I had been missing actually as a performer.
Yeah, and like you said, it feels like it wasn't a natural extension of yourself in that way that the fact that you had this musical past with your uh, grandfather being a jazz pianist, um, uh, playing yourself the piano and singing at the same time, and being able to improvise and concentrate yourself on both playing and singing was something that was already natural for you. So it is almost a continuation of that same spirit,
Exactly, exactly.
right? Um, so for this program that really like propelled you on the international stage for that specific reason, why did you choose the Winterreise of Schubert as a first experience, let's say, on that? Because it is quite an hefty, cycle to to tackle in a way. It's 24 songs that represents the really last moments of Schubert's life, and it speaks really deeply through the music and through the poetry of Wilhelm Müller. So, what made you choose that particular cycle?
Yes. Well, I feel it's important to mention that before I have been touring Winterreise, I was touring also a lot of different Schubert
Mm.
programs. So
Yeah.
Schubert's been a core part of my self-accompanied repertoire from since 2016. Um, so I feel like it was a lot of small steps that led me up to this cycle.
Mhm.
You know, it wasn't like it, yes, but I understand what you're saying in that um why Winterreise as the debut album and the piece that I've been touring for 2 years, of
Yeah.
course. And you know, I knew that my debut album would be Schubert. There was no question. And it was in the pandemic, in those like dark months where I was living alone in a house in the forest outside of Berlin,
Mhm.
and just piano, me, a lot of quiet and noise inside of myself, you know. And I spontaneously bought the score to Winterreise. I ordered it, and I just thought, okay, this would be a nice time to read through that cycle because I'd never done it. It's something I'd never even thought about as a woman because it's
Mm.
it's often associated with the male story
True.
and male voice even, or if it's a woman, it's a mezzo. So it I don't know what propelled me. I think it was just something like maybe this would be a really comforting piece. And it was another moment where it was an immediate click with the cycle. Like the first read through in my house by myself was just so powerful, and it's such a powerful piece. And I think at that time, I also could really relate with, and still can, the feelings that your character goes through, which are like deep grief and loss and solitude and isolation and longing to be understood, and like these incredibly universal themes that they just deeply resonated. And then I just dove into it. I had my debut of that cycle at Ottawa Chamber Fest in 2022, and then I recorded it in 2023 and released it in 2024. So it's been a huge journey. And I think, you know, I performed it 2 weeks ago in Ontario at the Alora Festival, and it was my 25th performance of the cycle. And every time it shows you something new. It's a great masterpiece, like Shakespeare or like Bach, where you could perform it every day and find something new. Um, and I also feel it's a cycle that allows your audience to deeply listen and also to feel some of the harder feelings that we feel as a human being. You know, it's just an incredibly touching cycle.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Um, does it does this peculiar position that you are on stage, does it give you a new perspective on the piece? Because one might surmise that the way that an accompanist or a pianist and a singer feel and interpret this work can be quite different in some aspect because one does not look at the same parameters in a way. So the fact that you are combining the two, does it change your your approach or your your feeling of the piece being both the one that tells the story and the one that accompanies it musically in a way?
Yeah, great question. I think the places where it changes, and of course it's like now I don't work that often with accompanists, so my point of view is really like
Yeah.
kind of tunnel, but I know that the one thing is I can be incredibly spontaneous musically in the moment, and I don't have to discuss it with someone, and I can, and this aspect for me is so inherently musical because it's like you then you feel like you can improvise in a way, like within the parameters of Schubert, and not, you know. So I think that's a place where it can really change. And I also think what the lucky position I get to be in as the singer and pianist is that I can dive into both of these worlds at different times. And so sometimes in a performance, in one moment, I'm incredibly connected to the text and to the story and to that emotion of a piece. And then the next moment, it's like, you sink into the piano, which I often feel in art song represents the like undercurrent of emotions or imagery or abstract imagery, so like number 17 Im Dorfe that starts like yaga daga 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 dum,
Mm-hmm.
yaga, and it's like that for me, that motive, first of all, could be so many things. And like as a pianist, you just get to dive into that every time. And sometimes it sounds like dogs barking, and sometimes it's chains rattling, and sometimes, it's yeah. So it's like the great gift to just completely live in the music.
Yeah,
There's
yeah,
no separation.
yeah. And the funny thing is that it art songs, piano music are made to be, accompanied. So
Yes.
we are not dealing with a Rachmaninoff sonata or concerto or a Liszt
Yeah.
paraphrase, for example. So it's the complexity comes from how does the composer transmutes the emotion of the text
Absolutely.
in the music, and it's really simple because, like you
Yes.
said, for the Im Dorfe, but just the first one with the Gute Nacht with this march rhythm that
Mm.
symbolizes the, this wandering character so
Yes.
prominent in the German Romantic
Yes.
poetry, walking in the snow. The Auf dem Fluss also with this.
Yada.
Yeah, yeah,
Yes.
yeah. And so many others. It is a really fascinating cycle that deals with a lot of emotion. So you need to have an understanding of the text and of the music at the same time to be able to embody it as a singer would do in a normal presentation on stage. So something that is is that something that was easy to do at the beginning to embody uh,
Mm.
those two things to be concentrated on accompanying yourself, which, like, I mean, it's not that complex, but um, saying the text and rendering that complexity that goes through language, that goes through the words, was that does that need a adjustment for you at the beginning?
Absolutely. I think it's been because this is a sort of performance practice that isn't done very often or hardly at all. There's no model of how to do this. So it's been a very much like a process of trial and error of me figuring out, okay, how do I get this to the absolute highest level for the work, and um, so that one thing isn't being sacrificed, whether that's like sometimes my voice is being sacrificed, or sometimes I'm covering myself because the piano part is huge
Hmm.
and I'm singing and I can't hear. So it's been, I would say, actually extremely hard work to figure
Hmm.
out exactly how I work. I have a very now meticulous way of preparing. Also, when I have a new song cycle I'm learning for next year or something, it's it's really a system that works super well. And part of that system I'll share with you is the two completely separately. So
Hmm.
the piano is its own world, the voice is its own world. And only after a time where they've deeply sunk in and I perform everything from memory. And so they're memorized, everything, then
Hmm.
I bring them together. And that I have found creates something new. And then you can make adjustments. And um, yeah. And so it's absolutely a kind of never ending process, but it's been really fun to discover how much we can also push our limits of what we're capable of. And
Yeah,
it's
and I suppose you say that you are really performing a lot of Schubert and in this
Mhm.
self-accompanying way that you created for yourself. Um, so can I assume, or can we assume that this repertoire can be broadened to other art songs, whether it be
Oh, yes.
in German or in French or Italian or any other art songs in repertoire, English art songs, also the songs of travel, for example.
Yeah.
So that
Yeah.
could be a great project.
Yes. Oh, yeah. I've in the last 9 years, I have about 8 recital programs, different repertoire, and Debussy, ariette oubliée, Benjamin Britten folk songs. I did that at the Salle Bourgie this year, the Benjamin Britten, which was really fun. Beethoven, An die ferne Geliebte, Albenberg, Sieben frühe Lieder. Like there's plenty of things that work, and there are things that don't absolutely don't work, sadly.
Yeah.
Like Olivier Messiaen with the big song
Mm,
cycles. No.
yeah. That's where the part, I mean, when you were mentioning that the sink in of those two separate roads, one is maybe a little bit too bumpy to be
Yeah,
able to do it independently on the other. So it needs to
exactly.
stay on their own separate road.
Exactly. And I should mention also that a huge part of my, aside from the Schubert, um, I feel like I have these two parts of myself as a performer. And one is very, very much dedicated to Schubert and Winterreise. And also the other part is to new music. And
Hmm.
I have commissioned composers to write especially for this. And I also perform a lot of, and George Crumb is a huge influence for me as well, the avant-garde composer, American composer.
Yeah, I was going to go into that
Okay.
that train of thought about the fact that you are also very implicated in new music and new compositions of today. That's a really important part in your artistry. Like we discussed before a recording, you're going to be performing with Mireille Lebel today, I mean tonight and tomorrow night on August 2nd, and the day that we are doing this interview, we are August 1st. The Pierrot Lunaire at the Festival d'Opéra de Québec. So in a new and augmented version, where you will be playing electronics with your own composition, if that is what I'm getting, right?
Exactly. Yeah. Yes. So I'm also a composer myself, and I'll, when I'm performing new music, I've incorporated electronics a lot into my performance practice as well. So it's very funny to have like Schubert and then this totally other crazy side. But we all have many sides to us, and yeah, and so the Pierrot is a very special project that we can't, we opened the show last night and it was a huge success, and can't believe it all worked out. I mean, it's a crazy project. Schoenberg, and then my compositions with electronics and dance and theater. Yeah.
Lastly, maybe just to follow up on the fact that you're commissioning works from other composers and new music, that writing specifically in having the thought in mind that the singer or the pianist in itself is going to be the one accompanying himself or herself. Um, from a compositional standpoint, what are the criterias or the way to write to be able to render this feasible in a way? Because one often write, independently on those area. One that compose for the voices does not think necessarily that, oh, I have to write my vocal line thinking about, oh, the accompaniment needs to be like not not like Messiaen.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. I think what from my experience so far, it poses a really nice challenge for a composer because they're given such a specific parameter. And I think composers work really well with parameters. It's like, okay, this and this and this. And then also they get to kind of discover something totally new and add to that canon. Like my dream is that I'm creating something so other people could do it too and say, oh, that now there's all this repertoire that's for specifically self-accompanied soprano or something, or a voice. And so a lot of that process, there's a composer that I've worked with a lot, Matthias McIntyre, who's based in Toronto, actually. Although he lived also in Montreal for a while. And he writes for voice, piano, and electronics for me. But a lot of that process was workshopping together. And he would just sit and watch, and I would do something like Schubert, and then he would see, okay, yeah, so a huge, I would say, exploratory
Mhm.
phase goes into that.
Exploration of your artistic journey as becoming yourself a singer and a self-accompanying pianist performing on stage. The public, the audience will be able to see it and hear it at Domaine Forget. That will be on Saturday, August 16th, where we will be singing Die Winterreise of Franz Schubert
Yes.
before continuing on your creative journey of new music and around the world.
Yes. And I also wanted to add one special thing about Domaine Forget is that that is where I recorded my debut album.
Sure, yes,
Yeah.
absolutely. That is
So
just
it's for me a very special full circle moment to come back and present the piece that I recorded.
yeah, absolutely. The people will certainly live a very great moment for that concert. Rachel Fenlon, thank you very much for taking the time to speak with us today.
Thank you so much.